Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Gladius, and today we'll talk about the new limited 5-star Xian Yun. She's a catalyst wielding animal unit that has a very interesting kit which both heals and buffs her allies. We rarely see healers appear on limited banners, so I'll be comparing her with the best healers we have and see how well she heals and what strategic value she brings to the table. I'll be addressing her best weapons, artifacts, and teammates. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Xian Yun is a support character that has 4 major contributions for her team. First and foremost, she is a party-wide healer. Second is that she enables her allies to jump higher, enabling the uses of plunge attacks. And number 3, she provides extra scaling for those plunge attacks. And lastly, Xian Yun is an animal unit, which means equipping the VV artifact set can reduce enemy resistance to either Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro with a swirled reaction. Xian Yun's normal attack doesn't do significant damage, but being a catalyst user, it does animal damage and also have a good range, which means you can utilize it to reapply VV if you ever needed to. Xian Yun's elemental skill is a special jump that initially can only be used on the ground, but upon reactivation in a short time window, she can jump up to 2 more times, which can be done on the ground or mid-air. For every elemental skill cast, Xian Yun has a special plunge attack to end with, resulting in a minor grouping effect on impact. It will do more damage and have a bigger AoE radius, with more jumps initiated by the skill. In combat, it's more likely that a single jump will suffice to generate the particles for her ultimate, while taking the least field time required. Xian Yun's ultimate is where all her support capabilities come from. First, it heals the whole party instantly, and also over time every 2.5 seconds for 16 seconds. Secondly, allows your active character to have higher jump capability, and this lasts until 8 plunge attacks have been completed. And in tandem with her passive talent, these 8 plunge attacks will also be buffed by 200% of Xian Yun's own attack. Note that only one enemy target can be affected by this increase per plunge attack. Although her damage, healing, and buffing capabilities cannot be directly compared to each other, but if I were to normalize her multipliers for better visual comparison, it can give you a better idea what her actual role in a team will be. I've assessed roughly a third of her being buffing utility, 2/3 being her main role, that is healing, and a small sliver that is her damage contribution. We will be keeping this in mind when leveling Xian Yun's talent and building her stats. For leveling talents, I recommend leveling the ultimate first to level 6 to 8 for satisfactory healing. Anything past that is completely optional. If you wanted her to contribute a little more damage, you can also level her elemental skill to your liking, although this is not mandatory. When building Xian Yun, we have to consider her entire kit. She doesn't do more damage than your typical healer, so building crit won't be that optimal. Both her plunge buffing and healing scales of her total attack percent is obviously the premium stat, but of course we want enough energy recharge as well. The ultimate is the gateway to all her heals and support. Defensive stats are also not mandatory for Xian Yun. She casts a skill into ultimate, then being swapped off. Most of her time is spent either in visible frames or off field. Because Xian Yun can only realistically use 1 skill per ultimate cycle, she will require a lot of energy recharge. She needs a minimum of 200% energy recharge, and that's even considering one of the conditions are met. The first option is to have another animal character on the team. Second is that you have a weapon that gives you energy in one form or another. 3, you're killing enemies that drop a lot of particles. Now let's look at main stats on artifacts. For Sands, you'll be looking for energy recharge for the highest consistency. Attack percent can work if you have insanely good weapon and substats to back it up. For Goblet, attack percent will be the best, unless you're a C6 DPS Xian Yun, that's when you go animal damage instead. For Circlet, attack percent will again be the best overall, but healing bonus will give you the highest healing output for a pure healer build. Building artifacts for Xian Yun can be a blessing and a curse. While it's easy to get the main stat, attack percent, but getting good amount of substats can be deceivingly easy. It's true she doesn't want crit rate or crit damage, but finding pieces that only roll into attack percent and energy recharge can really be RNG. For artifact set bonuses, Xianyun have really good options. Best overall artifact is the VV set. Just being an animal healer alone, Xianyun can already fit into many teams even without her plunge gimmick. This is because how insane VV can be for Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, and Electro characters. They can see an upwards of 28% increase in their overall DPS just from having VV swirl their element alone. While it's rare, but there are times where she prefer another set bonus. If you already have another animal unit utilizing VV, or your main damage dealer is doing Dendro, Geo, or animal damage, when that's the case, Xianyun is better off utilizing another supportive artifact set. 2-piece combinations can be decent to slap on her if you want to avoid farming artifacts. But my overall recommendation will be strongly set on getting that 4-piece VV set due to the strategic value that comes from this overpowered artifact set. When choosing a weapon for Xianyun, we go with the same philosophy as building her stats. We want the highest total attack possible while achieving high amounts of energy return. Biggest factors to look out for are high base attack percent, energy recharge, or some other form of energy gain. This tier list gives a general idea of how her best weapons compare, but each weapon have their own strengths and weaknesses. Her signature weapon is the best in slot, providing the highest total attack, best energy return, and even adds a plunge damage boost to her kit. This is a really good signature weapon and puts all the other limited healer weapons at least to shame. This weapon is one of the best they have come out with, and I can safely recommend if both weapons on the banner can be of use for your account. Outside of her signature, best options are Memory of Dust with insanely high attack value, and Oathsworn Eye that has a well-rounded attack stat and energy recharge. These two weapons are really good, but aren't the most obtainable, one being a limited banner weapon, the other comes from an event over 2 years ago. Moving down the list, we have Skyward Atlas with high attack value, then we have Tales of Dragon Slayer that loses out on a lot of attack, but instead it buffs another ally with a lot of attack percent. It's one of the stronger buffing weapon options, but the weakest healing option. The Hakushin Ring is also super obtainable being a blacksmith weapon, but my only complaint with this weapon is that the buff only lasts for 6 seconds. And finally, we have weapons with huge energy returns, the Favonius and the Prototype Ember. While they have the best energy value, but they definitely are not perfect. For Favonius, it's hard to get decent crit rate on Xianyun, and for Prototype Ember, you lack a good secondary stat, resulting in low attack value. Overall, I feel like Xianyun's signature is a good pull only if you want both weapons on that banner. Best alternatives are Oathsworn Eye and Memory of Dust. Weapons in the B tier are pretty close, and it comes down to your preference and team. Let's talk about team building now that we know how to build her. As I mentioned before, being an animal party-wide healer, that in of itself is enough to have strategic value in team building, because having the healer utilizing that VV set is so valuable. Currently, we have Jean and Sayu for this position. Don't be mistaken to think Xianyun can only be played with plunge attack DPS. An example of a good VV team is Double Hydro Raiden, where you don't really care for or even want to plunge attack. Naturally, the best pairing is with Furina. Furina is the strongest support given you fulfill the healing requirements. Xianyun's backloaded heal over time that lasts for 16 seconds is perfect to heal Furina teams. This is where she outshines front-loaded healers like Jean, who puts most of their healing in that initial burst and really lacks the sustained healing that makes Furina teams more comfortable to play with. With Xianyun and Furina, you're just steps away from forming an even more optimal team that can utilize the plunge attack buffing quirk that Xianyun provides. Since you'll be buffing a 200% plunge multiplier to your main DPS, that means you've got good multiplier and attack percent on your damage equation. You'd just be looking for a DPS that can go above and beyond with other multipliers such as damage bonus, crit damage, and multiplicative reactions for that maximum value. Not every DPS is made equal when it comes to plunge attacking. Pyro, Cryo, and Hydro have inherent advantage of being able to have multiplicative reactions. Also, characters just have insane plunge multipliers and capability. An extreme example is a C6 Kazuha with Bennett, who's crushing it in almost every multiplier. You also have Xiao, who's very refined in plunge AoE and mechanics, or Diluc with the highest plunge multiplier and the pyro element working in his favor. But it's not necessary to always min-max to reach that potential ceiling of DPS. In fact, Xian Yun's plunge multiplier buff is substantial enough to enable not all but some damage dealers to really improve their damage by weaving in plunge attacks. I won't list all the DPS that is compatible, but I'll give you a few notable examples. Hu Tao, who's in a very similar situation with Diluc, can weave in plunge attacks between her charge attacks and vape her damage. Ayaka can take advantage of her cryo infusion and do reverse melt plunge attacks. And we have someone like Alhaitham with the Dendro set to bring his own resistance shred while having the ability to trigger spread on all his plunge attacks. In summary, Xian Yun's plunge buff might not be strong enough to push every plunge DPS to the top of the meta, but really good still, and elevates the fun factor of your gameplay. Let's talk about Xian Yun's constellations. Constellation 3, 4, and 5 are either damage or healing multipliers, none of which I believe is necessary, so they're pretty bad in my eyes. The constellation worth talking about is 1, 2, and 6. Constellation 1 gives you an extra charge of the skill. Going from 1 to 2 is a big difference, giving you the ability to store up charges and massively reduce your energy requirement most of the time. It doesn't reduce the cooldown of the ability, so in prolonged fights, it will diminish. But most of the time, Eidolon 1 is equivalent to 50 to 100 energy recharge. Constellation 2 is the only one worth aiming for in my opinion. It more than doubles the plunge buff she provides to the party. This Eidolon is so significant it changes her role from being primarily a healer to a hybrid of a full-fledged damage booster and a healer at the same time. These type of role condensed characters can really push the envelope of what can be achieved of the whole team's potential. And finally, we have the Constellation 6 that changes her to an on-field main DPS. During her ultimate, you'll be able to use her skill and plunge without a cooldown for up to 8 attacks. According to my calcs, you won't be competing with the top meta DPS at C6, but her damage will still be very impressive given the right team build. Alright, with that, I conclude my complete guide and analysis on Xian Yun. It's a fresh new approach to how we explore and engage in combat. I'm quite satisfied with this bold character design, and I'm personally excited to play her. My name is Gladius. Thank you for watching. Until next time.